Samantha Seewoosurrun, good morning. Welcome in l'interview de Vendredi. In English, it's called Friday's interview. So I always start this interview by a silly question: who is Samantha?
Who is Samantha? Well, there are lots of different Samanthas that I've been working for many years in different sectors. So there are some Samanthas which are working in magazine publishing. There are others which are working in trade associations in Europe. It's like there are all kinds of.
There's also Samantha Fox.
Well, there is also that kind of Samantha, but well, it's I don't know so much about that.
So you're from, because you have not a normal English accent from.
No, but that's because I haven't lived in the UK really since I was around 19. So I was born in the UK. I've travelled and lived a lot in Europe. I've lived in Madrid in Spain. I've lived in Brussels, Belgium. I've also travelled and worked in the United States. And then I finally came to Mauritius around 4 years ago to work for the government first of all. And then I set up my own company here.
So you came in Mauritius to work for what? For a particular project?
To work with, it was a project for the Board of Investment.
BY,
So that's right. So they wanted to promote the Mauritius Financial Centre in the world. So we began by starting a project which was a messaging campaign, which was to cover Africa, Asia, and Europe. To say what is the Mauritius Financial Services Centre, what is it about, what are the benefits, and how can this could be extended into the world, and what can Mauritius do to really put itself on the map.
Was it a success for you? For 4 years with BOI?
Well, in fact, I worked for BOI for 6 months. Then there were a number of changes because it was at the end of 2014. You can imagine.
Yeah.
So there were a number of changes in the government at that time. But since then, with the benefits that I've had from different international experience and work, that I decided to set up my own company, which is Acuitas Communications.
Why have you decided to go into communication, where you are in promotion, you're promoting companies, big institution?
Yes, absolutely, yes. Well, this is something which I'd already, even when we were going back to around sort of 16, 17 years old, that I was always interested in the media and in politics. So even when I was a student, I used to be the president of the Conservative Party Association. That I'd also sort of undertaken, magazine internships when I was around 15, 16 years old. So I always wanted to work both in politics and in the media. So finally I found a way to do all of those things, to work in magazine publishing on the one hand, to work on corporate communications and financial communications on another, to do government communications and also for the European Union, for example. And so I like to have a mix of things to do.
Why have you chosen communication?
I think that it is a profession which is underestimated in a way. That people think that I have a good idea, I have a good product, everybody will buy it. It's like nobody will buy it if they don't know what it is or what it will do for them. And that is the same whether it is for a political campaign, whether it is for selling beer, whether it's for selling an asset or an investment product. And people need to know what will your product do for them, what's in it for me. This is what communication is about. And if you don't have a good communication, you will not have a good business, most likely.
Are Mauritian companies or your Mauritian clients as difficult as it is in the UK, in US, or we are a bit different?
Yes, I would say in some respects. It's always important to have a clear message no matter where you are. The scale of campaigns is obviously different in different places. In the US, for example, I worked for some time on Walmart, which was where you would have 45 people on the conference call, which I would say is like the upper limits of how a communication campaign can be run. In Mauritius, we have a mix of clients. We have both on the government side, on the side of corporates, but I think the essential skill of communication is always the same. It's to say, what is your message? Who is your spokesperson? What is the timing and the hook to communicate to the media, and to have the right type of audiences targeted well. The basic toolkit is always the same, whether it's in the US, Mauritius, UK, no matter where it is.
For your experience, you have been in politics, in media and communication now.
Yes.
What is a good communication? This is a big question.
What is a good communication? It's like a good communication is something that touches people. It's like something which is not too kind of macroeconomic, something which is not too complicated, something that reaches out to someone and says, this made an impact on me. This made me think of something new. It made me want to buy something. It made me want to investigate something. It's like something which has something that has a real impact on someone, that they remember and that they think about. That's a good communication. Something which touches the person well.
Are we good students in Mauritius?
Good students in Mauritius. I would say that you have a lot of different types of communication here. I would say you do have some very good corporates in Mauritius that have very well expanded teams with a lot of staff, a lot of people doing social media campaigns, PR. So there are some very good professionals here. But what I've seen since coming into the market is that there is also a lot of room for growth of communications market in Mauritius. The kind of international experience that I bring myself is not something which is so common in Mauritius, and the experience of working on US campaigns, government campaigns, European campaigns I've worked on. They all teach you something, give you a different angle. I've also worked, for example, in Eastern Europe. I've worked on campaigns, for governments, against governments. I ran a campaign against the president of Ukraine, which was very, very successful, but very controversial. So all of this kind of experience that you have is something that you take with you, and then you can apply it.
Is it easy to do a campaign against someone who is in power?
To do it on the ground in Ukraine would be a very bad thing to do. To do it from abroad, from the UK or from the US, is something that can be done. But what happened in that particular case? It was a US client that had set up an office in Ukraine, in Kiev, and there were representatives of the Ukrainian sort of hierarchy, oligopoly, you could even say, that were trying to take action against the company to strip its assets and this kind of thing. It's what it's called is raiders. You have raiders of oligarchs that try to steal companies, and in the last 10 years there were about 3,000 or 5,000 cases where this happened. And this was the first time where a US company was targeted to have its assets stripped. So this is the kind of real crisis communication, that you have a major investor that's having its assets stripped in Eastern Europe. This is a very bad situation where you can lose your reputation, you can lose your money, people can be put in prison, and this is extremely serious. So you need to have a campaign which is very well crafted, very well delivered. Even in some of these cases, that the physical security of the corporate representatives is at risk. So you have to be careful what you do.
You had a good time.
I had an interesting time, I would say.
How do you see the economic situation in Mauritius? That we are nearly on the budget. Are you going to cover the budget? Are you getting insights from your client, your customers?
Well, yes. Obviously, in Mauritius, that we have many corporate clients who are all going to be very interested to see the outcome of the budget and the follow-up. I think that in the Mauritian economy, it's I think it is broadly on a good path. That obviously the government has that ambition to become a high-income economy within the coming years. So I think that the basic ingredients are right, but also there's more sort of regulatory work to be done. For example, we work a lot in financial services. We're expecting that there will be new measures to do with the blueprint for the financial sector. There is the outcome of the FinTech regulatory committee, which will be taken on board. So certainly there are a lot of opportunities for the Mauritian financial services sector to grow. But I think also in other paths you have the port, a lot of new developments in also property. You have smart cities sort of cropping up around the islands, which is also bringing in new investments and also new ways of working. Because one of the biggest problems we have here in Mauritius is a huge congestion on the routes. So I think that there will also be there are already a number of new roads being announced and so on. But I think that the smart city concept is something where if you can actually live next to your work, it's this has a good environmental impact as well.
Since you have offices in Brussels, London, are your customers there interested to invest in Mauritius? Or are they waiting for the big measure to come? Some relief, some tax relief, corporate tax relief before they settle in Mauritius?
I think that there are a number of British companies that we're actually working with here in Mauritius. I would say most of them are interested in innovation primarily. So bringing in these new products, things to do with fintech, things to do with new products and services that Mauritian can offer. So I think that this is the way forward, bringing a sort of British or other European expertise to Mauritius to help launch new products, to help train people. I mean, we have one client in the insurance sector which is actually going to be doing a training just next week to help, with some new skills, new specialist skills in insurance. So I think certainly that foreign expertise can be helpful, and I think that the sector here, now we hear sort of near financial services operators, that I think operators are very open to having more expats, more expertise coming from abroad, so people can be well trained. They can, they can become better
What type
professionals.
of expertise you're talking about? Very special, like the golden boys, qualities like golden boys, or nearly technical computers,
I think
computerized?
I think it is a mix of things. That I mean, certainly there are some sort of computer type of skills that
Traders,
can come in.
yeah.
That's it for traders and so on. But for insurance, for example, that say one of our clients here is very active in the area of specialty insurance in Africa. So you have things like corporate insurance, you have like niche insurance for things like political risk, terrorism, things like this, which are new types of insurance which are now of growing importance in Africa. But here in Mauritius there hasn't really been a market for that. So now you actually see that Mauritius can be a hub for new types of products and services, but at the same time the Mauritian people on the ground must have the right training.
This is an important thing you just told, that we need to go in type of, what type? If someone comes in your office, I want to invest, I do something that nobody does in Mauritius, which one would you advise him to invest in?
Well, currently, I mean, I still think that financial services has a lot more potential, and the outcome of the budget measures on fintech in particular, I think, can help Mauritius to become, a blockchain hub for the region. I mean, this is a topic which is very popular. There will be a big blockchain conference taking place in August, I know. So I think that the innovation angle is one of the strongest ones that Mauritius has. But I mean, also in other parts of the economy. I mean, obviously, financial services is more on the upwards tangent, but other sectors like sugar, manufacturing, and some others are maybe facing more difficult times. So there's also an element of reinvention in a way, which is needed in the economy.
First question, what is blockchain? I'm hearing about it every day. We are talking about it in communication terms. What is a blockchain?
So what is a blockchain? So well, I mean, how it is that you have a number of different sorts of, so to make it as simple as possible, I mean, you have a number of different pieces of the puzzle, and nobody owns all of them. So it's there's a sort of kind of inbuilt sort of authentication within the blockchain system. So it's like, so what does that mean in practice? I mean, it has lots of applications in financial services, but if you would take pharmaceuticals, for example, that pharmaceuticals is an area where you have a lot of sort of fake products and so on. So how can blockchain help pharmaceuticals? Is you put it at one end of the sort of the supply chain, you basically verify that, like, along all of those different steps in the system, that that product has remained secure, that it has not been tampered with or interfered with, sort of along the way. I mean, also in terms of identity, for example, like in Africa, there are lots of people that may not have formal identity. So blockchain is something that can actually help them to have a kind of a digital identity, and then they can use it for different applications. So I think that the blockchain is an area that can grow. I mean, for now it's mainly about financial services that it's kind of discussed, but I think for Africa itself, I mean, here we are, Mauritius is an African country, but I think that the blockchain applications of the future, say in areas like healthcare and supply chains, is something which is very promising, and that if we can set up Mauritius as a blockchain hub for the region, that can also bring in a number of companies. I mean, I would say we're already seeing a lot of US investors coming in and setting up companies in Mauritius. I mean, one of them that I know is setting up a kind of collateral lending scheme. I mean, they're all kind of things, but it's interesting that US investors have said there's a very good regulatory sandbox license introduced in Mauritius, and this is something we can take advantage of. And I mean, we often compare ourselves here to Singapore to say how can we do better. I mean, it seems that the regulatory sandbox license in Mauritius was actually more appealing to the Americans either than the one in the UK or in Singapore or even in Dubai, for example. So I think that here, if we can make ourselves a hub for innovation, then there is a lot we can do. And from our side, what we do as communications advisors is we help to communicate, what's the benefit of that complicated sounding product, what does it mean, how will it change people's life. This is what we're here to do.
Is Mauritius ready to be a blockchain hub?
I think it can be. I mean, we will find out now what the new regulations will be. I mean, there's already a lot of different regulations springing up around the world. I mean, I know that Gibraltar, for example, is one where you already have a sort of a new regulation, but it only actually regulates the technology and not the activity. So I think in Mauritius that we will be looking for, for maybe a more sort of nuanced approach. We've had a lot of international experts from Bermuda, from the UK, from a lot of countries to advise Mauritius on the right direction. And I know that the Financial Services Commission has done a lot in this regard. So no, I'm confident that the the fintech future is promising.
I'm coming back to the BOI. Have Mauritius succeeded onto that Asia, Mauritius, African axe?
Well, I think we've tried it probably from various angles. I mean, we've had with great fanfare, we had the air corridor, which was to say, this is going to be the sort of the physical way we will bring the person from Asia, we will bring them to Mauritius, they will carry on into into Africa. I mean, I think that this has had a kind of a checkered experience. That a number of as part of that corridor, the parts of the flights which were going from Mauritius to Africa, a number of them have actually been cancelled because there wasn't sufficient demand. So we have a slight sort of chicken and egg situation, that first you need to have the flights to bring the people around. It's like, what is the right way forwards? I mean, I think you have to try to do both. You have to try to foster the demands and to provide the supply to have the right connectivity to move people around. I mean, we've just seen now that Kenya Airways is just starting a new service to Mauritius, which I think is flying 4 times a week.
Yes.
So that gives us.
Just started
just started in the last few days. That's it. So this is something that also helps us into East Africa as well. I mean, for South Africa, we still have a lot of flights. So I think that the air corridor concept was a good idea, but maybe the timing wasn't exactly right. I mean, when it comes,
was it too late or too early?
Was it too early, too late? It's difficult to tell. It seems like the timing wasn't quite right. Whichever for after, I'm not quite sure which it should have been. But I mean, in terms of investment flows between Africa and Asia, then I think that Mauritius still has a good story to tell. That for those which want to come from Asia and move into Africa, that if they come through Mauritius, that they have a lot of advantages. That you have various sort of investment, protection and promotion agreements, which means that if you invest into an African country, that imagine that your investment gets nationalised. That if you go via Mauritius, then you have a sort of a safety net, if you like, to protect against this kind of thing. And I think overall that Mauritius still has a role to play, but I think we have not yet found all of the answers of how we can make the most of it.
Whenever an American or an English or an European customer comes to you, what are my safety, my security is to come to invest in Mauritius? What are your arguments about it?
Well, yes, I mean, we tell them that that Mauritius is considered a sort of a safe haven, both in terms of of sort of politics and stability. That we have a lot to offer. That we have a good investment climate. That we have a sort of like even things like new e-licensing systems which have recently been introduced. That I think that we have a multicultural sort of situation. That we have a sort of a fairly harmonious relations between different communities, and I think even on sort of in terms of the social side, that Mauritius it's a comfortable place to be. That people don't feel under threat. And I think even in terms of physical safety, I mean, myself in London a few weeks back, I mean, I was nearly caught up actually in a terrorist attack. In fact, in Oxford Circus, that there was, I mean, every day in London now, you have sort of bomb threats. Like
security is important
that's
for
right, exactly.
investors.
Indeed, but I mean, I think it is both physical security for investors and their families, because I mean, even investors now living in the UK, I mean, taking your child to school can be a risky activity. There can be, a terrorist shooting anytime, anywhere. I mean, even in Belgium, where I used to live, I mean, there was the bombings there. I mean, there are bomb threats in schools on a regular basis, both in Belgium and in the UK. Whereas if you come to Mauritius, the investor can say, at least here my family is safe. I can take them to a nice school next to the coast, and and I have peace of mind. I mean, I think
you don't talk about seaside, about sunshine, about good weather. There's not the London fog or
that's it. But you have all of this as well. But I mean, I must say that but now in Mauritius, I mean, there are also places that are sunny in the world. But what Mauritius does have, it's the peace of mind and the security, which is still something which sets it apart. And I think also it's being a democracy. I mean, sometimes we have a lot of nonsense in the papers and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, we do have a vibrant democracy where people can speak out and say what what you think, which is not the case in a lot of other jurisdictions in the world. Even places which are not too far from us in the Middle East and so on. That it's quite different. You can't openly criticise an opposition party. There might even not even be an opposition in some of those places. So I think at the end of the day that Mauritius still has a lot to offer. And I think that as time goes by, and that even ourselves working on the promotional side, that we do our part in trying to promote the jurisdiction to say this is a safe and sound place to come, both for your family, for your investments, and why not come and have a look, see if you like it.
Are they looking about corruption index? We know we have a very good business-oriented index.
Yes, absolutely.
But are they giving us something like corruption, transparency, good governance? Are they looking into that before coming into Mauritius?
Well, yes. I think that's also another good point that you mentioned. We've topped in Mauritius. We've topped like the Mo Ibrahim Index of good governance. I think for more than a decade. We have very many good kind of indices and statistics that say we are a sound jurisdiction. We had also the new national code of corporate governance, I think, in the last sort of 18 months. So I think Mauritius has set itself on a good path. Also in terms of OECD tax haven sort of allegations and so on. Now that we have been rated as compliant with the OECD standards, which is the same as Ireland and Norway, and no one would ever say that Norway is a tax haven. So I think that we need to do more to
data protection too is important. We are on that turmoil of European data protection.
Well,
I
that's
think
right,
GDPR
exactly.
or something
that's
like
right,
that.
Exactly. So on GDPR, it's because the GDPR just came into effect in Europe just about 2 weeks ago. So Mauritius had also to make sure it would maintain that international standard that it now has a new Data Protection Act of 2017, which although it is less detailed than the EU law, which I've studied very well as I used to work on the EU data protection policy, but at the same time, I would say that the Mauritian law has all of the main elements.
How does this affect Mauritius?
But in fact, it does, in terms of communications, it does affect your marketing, because it means that you need to have the positive consent of a person, which means that somebody actually has to click on something to say, I consent to my data being used. It does have an impact, across Mauritius, particularly in the hospitality sector, for example, because there are a lot of Europeans that are coming into the market, like a couple of weeks of holiday. They fill in a lot of data when they first arrive at reception. It's like, what happens to that? Because what you may have done in the past, if you were a Mauritian hotelier, is that you could have actually sent that data, to like say to Singapore or to Hong Kong. So you could have sent it abroad. Whereas now, if you actually want to export data in any way, you must have the authorization of the Data Protection Office here in Mauritius. So there are a number of new rules and regulations, and also in Europe itself, the fines can now be massive. It can be really like millions of dollars of fines for people that don't play by the GDPR rules.
Are Mauritian companies aware about it? Are you talking about it?
I think it was only in the last couple of weeks when everyone began to start receiving emails that said, "Are you GDPR compliant? Click here." I think that this concentrated the minds of a lot of people in the Mauritian business community, and say particularly for those which are dealing with a lot of foreigners like hotels. I'm sure that there must be many that are still looking to check, is my system really GDPR compliant, or do I still have more work to do?
Is there more work to do in Mauritius concerning that issue?
I would say for anyone that actually exports their data now, they need to be very careful which countries that they are exporting to, and whether that country has adopted a GDPR equivalent type of law. Because if they have not, then you can face a lot of problems.
Some years ago, the English people decided to go out from the Union. Are companies from UK interested to come into Mauritius because we have some to use the bilaterals in case the Brexit there's no more bilateral agreement between the Union and UK?
Yes, well, this is a topic which I'm very much familiar with, because I actually lived and worked in Brussels and in the European Parliament for many years. So if we look at Brexit now, the main emphasis of the UK government is to say we had a referendum, we have a decision, and we must implement it. Now we have a number of different topics of discussion about the Irish border, and we've had lots of topics about discussion discussions about immigration, the rights to settle in different countries, and so on. But I mean, if we look at like where are we today in relation to Brexit, I mean, the UK government has now moved onto a much sort of wider playing field, if you like, which is the Commonwealth, because we've had the Commonwealth obviously for many years, but the UK government has not actively sought to promote the Commonwealth as much as it would do. So I think that Brexit has now really opened up the eyes both of the government and the people to say there's a whole world out there. That the UK has excellent trading links with many nations, and we've now seen the Prime Minister going out to many different countries where she hadn't been very often, looking to see what are those trading relationships which we can now master.
Would Mauritius be a preferred partner because we are in Commonwealth? We have
exactly.
Strong ties with France, with
and we
UK.
have the linguistic advantage also. Yes, no, I think that Mauritius definitely has it has a good relationship with the UK, and we're very much in touch with the British High Commission here, which does an excellent job. So I think that Mauritius definitely does have a chance to do more in this regard. But now we basically have we've opened up the whole Commonwealth to more discussion. So now it's a matter of trying to make sure that we do stay on the radar. And I think that bringing in UK expertise in areas like financial services to help grow the Mauritius International Financial Centre. I mean, these are the kind of things where we can really reinforce that bilateral connection.
Are we not too far from this market, NASDAQ, from New York, from Singapore, from Japan, from Berlin, from France, from Paris, from London, to do that?
I think that now we live in a remote connected world. So I mean, I know plenty of people where I live myself, in Tamarack on the west coast, which are constantly in contact with New York on a daily basis. I mean, people tend to sort of have a nice morning, go to the gym, and then they work until like 3 o'clock in the morning with the United States. But I mean, say in the kind of interconnected world that we have, I mean, I think that distance is not a problem. And I mean, now, I mean, with the connection that we have via Dubai, that there are many flights to the US and so on, that people can perfectly well manage, a business operation which has something in Mauritius, it has something in the US and in other parts of the world. I think that the distance is not the problem that it was.
Let's come to the good news. I've heard good news for your group, for Acuitas Communication, best something.
Oh yes, indeed, that's right. No, I'm glad that you mentioned that. So no, we were actually very lucky to be recognised in the Global Business Insight Awards, which is a set of awards which looks at the investors, business around the world, looking across all 7 continents of the world to recognise excellent performance and so on. And so ourselves, we were just recognised this week by an award for the Financial and Corporate Communications Agency of the Year. So this is a great accolade for myself and my team. We very much appreciate.
You dreamt about it 3 years ago. I'm going to be number 1.
Well, that's right. Well, 3 years ago, when I came and looked around the market and met a number of people. I mean, there are plenty of PR firms in Mauritius all doing different things, but I felt that there was actually really a niche for a player which would focus more strongly on the financial services sector, because I would say most of the PR firms here, by international sort of standards, would be considered generalists. But they're doing beer 1 minute, they're doing property the next. I mean, they're not very strongly focused on one thing. So I mean, on our side, that I would say that we've built our business on financial services, but now we've also we now also have clients in other sectors. We also have sort of governmental types of accounts. We also have we work for some conglomerates. So we have now we've kind of broadened our wings in a way. But I think financial services is really an area where we can continue to grow, because as more players come in, then we can help them to clarify their messages and to reach out.
Is it a easy niche market?
Well, I would say we're the only ones in it currently. So it's certainly a niche.
You have the eyes on you now.
Yeah, that's it.
Not of eyes on you, yeah.
Well. No. But I'm someone that thrives on competition. It's like I wouldn't like to sit thinking I'm the only one here, doing this. I mean, I'm sure that there are plenty of other market players who will also see, as we do, the chance to work for more financial services players. And I think then it's a matter of come with the right offer, come with the right price, come with the right attitude to help your clients. Because it's what we don't particularly like is just a kind of flash in the pan where you launch something and then you never do the follow up. And the kind of clients that we like to have is someone that has something interesting to bring to to the islands, but also something that can grow, something, an operation that can bring new jobs and bring new support to communities. We have one client that we're working with now that's going to be developing a very big project in the south of the islands, where there hasn't been so much development apart from the airport or from Omnicane, frankly. So I think that this is
in the south. We are talking mainly about beaches. It's not something. It's nothing dealing with a beach or something like that.
It's something in financial services. So there's no beach involved. But I think that's something which can really bring value and jobs to the Mauritian economy. It's like this is the kind of client that we like to support, because we think it really means something. It's not just not just putting up a Facebook page. It's something that we can help to grow the awareness. We can help the clients to really make a difference and make an impact, and that's the kind of work that we like to do.
When you received that email, I don't know, was it a letter, phone call? How do you feel at that?
Yes. Well, in fact, the first time I read it, I thought I hadn't understood it well, but because I just sort of read the first couple of lines and said, oh, I've won something. Oh, that's good. And so let's have a look. And yes, it was like we've all won. It's the agency. We've all won. So, but it's always nice to receive a recognition from abroad, because obviously myself and my colleagues, we work very hard, and it's always appreciated to see.
For you personally,
yes, for me personally, yes, but for me personally, because it's I like to, it's not only for me. It's I like to have a good team of people around me, which I'm very fortunate to have, and it's also about helping people to learn different things. Like myself, I've worked in many different countries of the world on many very different types of assignments, and this is what I like to also to do here. To 1 minute you're in a government ministry, the next minute you're out doing something else completely different, and I think that everyone works well on the variety.
You just talk about you've learned from many countries. What have you learned from Mauritius?
What I've learned from Mauritius, I think the thing about Mauritius, which is different to other places, it is much more informal in a way. That the relationships that you have with people are often stronger, because there are many times where you go to a meeting here, and then someone tells you, oh, in fact, I'm actually a relative of your brother-in-law, and it happens very many times, even in kind of governmental meetings, corporate meetings, that you have a conversation with someone, and then it turns out that they're actually family. So this is the kind of thing which would almost never happen, in Europe or in the UK or even in the US. But I think that in Mauritius you have, the fact that this is a small community where everyone knows everyone. I would say it helped us a lot to grow our business on the basis of word of mouth.
It's a good thing then to have this type of informal
relation. It's like more informal, more kind of closer type of relationship with people, but even at government level, but also in corporate level and so on. It makes a difference. It's more personal here.
What would the CEOs would like to change? What would be your advice to them to change, to be a bit more aggressive, be a bit less Mauritian? What would be your advice to them?
Well, I think that obviously when CEOs go abroad, then they behave differently, because here it's like you go to a meeting and everyone is a mate and brother-in-law of everyone else. It's like when people go abroad, then they obviously are on a different footing. So then they really need to articulate at a competitive level, what is it exactly that Mauritius has to offer? Is it more efficient? Is it a matter of cost? Is it a matter of innovation? I think if CEOs go abroad and they're trying to kind of sell their wares or to open a new office, it's like you have to have the offer right, and you need to be able to articulate it clearly and well.
Do you advise them to have a personal Facebook page, a professional Facebook page?
I think that now I would say that there's more intermingling of the two, because now there are many people that 2 years ago you would have only had them as a LinkedIn connection, and then they also decide to contact you on Facebook because they think that you've met a number of times. Everyone in Mauritius is quite friendly, so then you become Facebook friends too. Although it is also an issue that you have to be careful what you put there, because it's like things that you would have only had for your university friends actually now will be seen by potential clients after they've connected to you on Facebook. So it does mean that the use of social media has to be considered carefully.
So better to be on LinkedIn or to be on Facebook?
I would still say that for professional purposes that LinkedIn is still definitely more useful. I would say that ourselves, personally myself, as a professional here, we receive many LinkedIn requests from people all around the world that have seen different things that we do, because we also run a website called Platform Africa, which seeks to protect the image of Mauritius as a platform for Africa. What does it do for Africa? What are the different issues happening? And when we have a particular focus on finance, technology, and energy. So when we publish articles on those topics and we share them on social media, we suddenly get like somebody dealing with energy in India, or somebody dealing, like somebody, a technology expert from Tanzania might suddenly contact us. And then what's good about that is that we say, oh, we'd love to hear your story. So you've set up, a technology startup, in Zimbabwe with blockchain. Like, fascinating. Like, please tell us all about it. And I would say through this we also learn interesting things. I mean, this particular chap in Zimbabwe had said, he said because like because of the kind of hard currency is like is so weak and fast evaporating, that now even people in their 50s or 60s will come to me and say that how can I get bitcoins? Like, what can blockchain do for me? That's it, because on other parts of the world people are saying, oh, it's not regulated, it's not good. Whereas actually here, it's like if you have a currency which is worthless and evaporating, then people say, I would rather have that virtual currency. I'd rather place my bet on that, which looks more promising, as compared to what I've put under my mattress, which is completely worthless.
So it's a big issue.
Yes, exactly. That's it. So, but I think, this is one of the beauties, I think, of our news portal, that it allows us to uncover the stories of real people, not just the top CEOs, but what's happening on the ground in Africa, which is fascinating.
At the start, we talk about politics, and have politics changed around the world with social media. Now we see that there's an American president, but every day is nearly 20 or 30 tweets per day.
Yes.
Something he said in the other Oval Office, and then he's hacking his stuff by Twitter. Have this changed?
In fact, it has changed, because say about 20 years ago, when I first started working in the European Parliament, that then I was working for a number of politicians, and then it was all about just being in the press. Whereas now, if I'm ever sort of on a campaign trail with them or something, practically everybody they meet, they want to have a photo with them. That on all sides, the person being met will then put it on their kind of Twitter account or Facebook, and that the politician wants to be constantly seen as being out in the community. I would say that now, many kind of European politicians can have like 15, 20 photo ops per day. Literally everywhere you go and everyone you meet is a photo opportunity. So I would say that there's also a sort of a competitive element, that when people are looking in party headquarters to say, is that person a very active politician who should be appointed or nominated again for the next time, then we'll say, let's have a look on their Facebook account, let's see what have they been doing in the community. So it means in a way that the political campaign never ends. Because years ago you would have got in for a 5-year term, you stay where you are and you're happy. Whereas now, it's like in the age of social media, it's almost as if the campaign never stops. every day is a campaign that people are looking at you, and also if you post things that people don't like, or you imagine that you are supporting a policy, imagine a new development in your constituency, there will be people that don't agree with you. So you can also get a lot of abuse on forums like Facebook, that your constituents can paste all their anger and their comments. So it means now that these days that politicians have to be constantly on the ball, and say that the campaign never stops really.
So we have also this phenomenon, but is fake news now. How in terms of a communication company are going to deal with disaster, some big fake news, and whenever it goes, I take it in the Mauritian context, but whatever is published on Facebook, Mauritius is taken as granted.
It's taken for granted, yes. That's right, yes.
Whenever it is a fake news.
Well, I think that you are right. That's up until now. We haven't really had a big problem of fake news in Mauritius, I don't think. There's like the sort of usual.
We got some. I've got one.
You've got one?
Yes. There was suppose that one Miss Mauritius, beauty constant representing Mauritius, has been arrested with drugs.
Yes. Oh well, I didn't see this one. Yes. Well, maybe it's now starting.
This is fake news.
Yes. Well, maybe
whenever we contacted, she was
horrified.
Horrified. Yes. And the news got viral.
But it is true that that you can never stand still. That these kind of things certainly can happen. Certainly, obviously, we're not seeing it on the same scale that we have seen elsewhere. But it is true that's the nature of the internet. That that it can pop up any time. And if you have very kind of tech-savvy political opponents, then they can start to
Are Mauritian companies ready for that, for something that goes during an electoral campaign about a fake news, about financing political parties?
It's a good point. I mean, I would say up until now, I don't think that many IT firms in Mauritius will have focused on this. But I mean, now that we're actually warming up to the next election, who knows, 18 months, or we don't know exactly when. I mean, it is a good point that now firms should start to look into it, because as compared to the last Mauritian election back in 2014, I would say that the game has moved a lot since then. I mean, if we look at exactly as you have mentioned, Trump, that that like in 2014 we were in a different ball game, a different era even.
So last question, Samantha, what can I wish you to your company?
What can you wish to
the communication company?
To the communication company, I think that you can wish us to have like further growth of our company and of our business. But I think above all, I think it's like let us help the Mauritian economy grow more. That is what we would like to do. So I'm not just
by
here.
Which means
yes,
grow more.
That's it. Like to kind of develop in new areas, to have greater recognition of Mauritius on the world map. It's like my children are Mauritian. It's like I have a stake in the country here. I mean, I would like to see the country to do more, like to do better, to attract more investments. And but overall, I think that we have a very good path ahead. And it's just a matter of of taking the right steps, having the right initiatives, and we will be on our way.
Okay, Samantha Seewoosurrun, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome.